What do you mean? You promised you'd come to my parents' house on the due date, right? I couldn't believe what I was hearing over the phone. On my expected delivery date, my husband had left for a trip. What difference does it make if I'm there or not? He replied in an annoyed tone. Filled with bitterness, I pretended to be calm and said, "Yeah, you're right. That's right. As long as you understand. I need to be there to help you, Emily, after you give birth, so I'm just rejuvenating now." Rejuvenating? He always pretends not to notice even when I say my back hurts. I knew he was cozying up with his mistress at our home while I was at my parents' house for the birth. "Hey, Robert, you're at that usual spa resort now, aren't you?" I could hear his surprise as he gasped when I guessed the location. "How do you know that?" "Yes, I am, but is there something wrong with that?" "Nothing but wrong, considering he's on a trip with his mistress. Yes, it's time for some payback. My name is Emily Johnson, 28 years old. I'm currently on maternity leave, but I usually work as a regular office employee. My husband Robert worked in a different department at the same company. We started dating after being seated next to each other on a company trip. Robert was always thoughtful, treating me with great care. On dates, before I even mentioned it, he'd casually buy me a drink, saying, "You must be thirsty, right?" Of course, it was the same when I was hungry. "You must be getting hungry, right? There's a diner right there, let's grab a bite to eat," he'd say at just the right moment, and we'd have our meal. That's why his proposal timing was perfect. "It's our 1-year anniversary today, and it's a lucky day. So I want you to say yes. Will you marry me?" He knelt down against the backdrop of a beautiful sunset over the ocean. Of course, he opened the ring box as well. I was so moved, I don't remember what I said, but I probably answered, "Yes, please marry me." Then everything went smoothly, from meeting each other's families to the wedding, and we moved into an apartment together. I was 25, and Robert was 29, right in the ideal age for marriage. We were very happy, juggling work and newlywed life. We had a schedule where I'd cook on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Robert on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Our life had a comfortable rhythm, and I was truly glad we got married. We hadn't thought about having children yet, and Robert also said he wanted a couple of years just for us. My parents were relaxed, saying, "Sweet newlywed life is good," but my in-laws were clearly displeased, insisting you should have kids before 30. "You might be okay with it, but if you're too laid back, Robert will be an old man by the time your kids grow up. We won't even be able to see our grandkids' weddings." While I'd be happy to let them see their grandkids' weddings, I wasn't going to rush into having children for that. Being constantly asked, "No kids yet," started making visits to my in-laws unpleasant. They should talk to Robert about it, but they always waited until I was alone to bring it up. Finally, they even said, "Don't you dislike doing that? You won't have kids if you don't do the deed. You might end up getting cheated on, and he'll have kids with another woman." I couldn't stay silent after such rude remarks. I told Robert, "Let's go home, I don't feel well." While he said, "We just got here, I want to relax a bit," he noticed my pale face and reluctantly got up. On the way home, I told him what his mother said, but he replied, "My mom wouldn't say that. She's not that kind of woman. Maybe you misunderstood? She always tells me we should have kids at our own pace." My mother-in-law adored my husband, the youngest of 3 siblings, and would never say anything unpleasant to him. She always spoke to him with an almost sickening level of sweetness. So, it wasn't surprising that she said the complete opposite to me. I wished I could let her hear how much sarcasm and snide remarks she hurled at me. Carrying these unresolved feelings, I returned home. Since that incident, I decided that my husband should be the only one visiting his parents' house. I would make excuses like being busy at work or feeling unwell to avoid going with him. However, not wanting to stir up trouble by staying away too much, I limited my visits to just New Year's, Thanksgiving, and birthday celebrations. This arrangement helped me stay mentally stable and enjoy my days more. Before I knew it, I turned 28, and we decided it was time to try for a child. My husband, now over 30, was all for it, especially seeing many of our friends with their children. Fortunately, as soon as we decided to try, I got pregnant quickly. I had been worried that we might need to go through fertility treatments, but that turned out to be an unnecessary concern. My morning sickness wasn't too severe, and I was able to continue going to work as usual. However, there was one thing that I found regrettable. It might sound indulgent to call it a regret. My husband started doing more household chores than before, but he stopped touching me entirely. Having a baby in the belly is a big deal. I can't bear the thought of something happening because I couldn't control myself. So, I'm holding back in that area, and instead, I'll do more chores, he told me, with words so kind they brought tears to my eyes. At first, he really did handle the chores efficiently. But as time went on, he gradually started coming home later. Initially, he said, "I don't want to burden you, Emily, so I'll eat out twice a week," and began dining out on the nights I was supposed to cook. Eventually, he started going out one day every weekend as well. He would stay home on the other day to help with chores or go baby shopping with me. Though our intimate life had ceased, we were still having a good time together. He was caring, and we both were eagerly anticipating the baby. I did feel dissatisfied about not being seen as a woman, but I kept those feelings to myself, thinking it was better not to push it. We had discussed where I would give birth and decided on me returning to my parents' house, with my husband's support. My parents' house was a bit away from ours, but not so far that he couldn't make it in time for the birth. I wanted a partner-present birth, and he had agreed to be there. So, before going back to my parents, we were busy preparing all the baby necessities. Finally, next week was the scheduled date for my return to my parents, and this week I decided to leave work early for some final checks and came home earlier than usual. When I unlocked the door, I heard voices inside. It was my husband and some unknown woman's voice. And it seemed like it was coming from our bedroom. He should have gone to work as usual today. I hadn't heard anything about him taking a day off, and more importantly, why was there a woman's voice in our house? With my heart pounding in anxiety, I quietly pressed my ear against the bedroom door. "Hey, honey, are you sure we can use this bed today? The thrill of doing something forbidden is really exciting." Could he be cheating? I felt even more anxious, and cold sweat started running down my back. "This bed is great, very comfortable. Come on, lie down. Emily just sleeps like a log anyway. From today onwards, I'll just picture you in my mind." I couldn't believe my ears. I never thought my husband, who had been so kind to me every day, would see me like that. Haha, that's hilarious. A log, huh? Can't help it, your wife is almost due, right? Of course, she's going to get bigger everywhere. The woman's voice was irritatingly loud with laughter. I don't know how long I stood there at the door. I was so shocked that my memory completely blanked out. Before I knew it, their voices, clearly indulging in each other, reached my ears. I recorded their conversation on my phone and quietly left the house. As I walked, the reasons why my husband hadn't touched me and had been staying away from home became clear. He had been kind to me and stayed at home just enough to cover up his affair. Overwhelmed by shock and despair, I collapsed onto a park bench. What should I do now? I couldn't imagine living with such a man when our child was about to be born. He would pretend to care for me and the baby while enjoying his affair. And he would likely prioritize the other woman. Even as I tried to think about what to do next, my mind was empty, unable to come up with anything. I couldn't muster any strength and sat there for hours, unable to think clearly. Then, the baby inside me kicked my stomach hard. As I winced in pain, I realized that I couldn't afford to wallow in self-pity. I had this child to protect. Although I detested the idea of returning to a house that my husband and his mistress had used, I had no other choice. I decided to sleep on the couch today and arranged to go back to my parents' house earlier than planned. When I got home, my husband acted as usual, as if nothing had happened. If I hadn't witnessed that scene, I would never have imagined he was cheating. "You must be tired, right? You've gotten so big, it could be any day now. You're really precious to me. If you haven't eaten yet, you should eat quickly and get some rest." Could this really be the same man who called me a log? I was terrified of my husband, who lied as easily as breathing. I wanted to get away from him as soon as possible. "Thank you, Robert. You're always so kind. I've been getting a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions, so I was thinking of going back to my parents' house as soon as possible. I was planning on this weekend, but if I can arrange it, I might leave tomorrow." For a moment, I thought I saw a flash of happiness on his face. He quickly returned to his usual smile, but he couldn't hide that brief change in expression. "Are you sure? That's worrying. I'll miss you, but I'll take good care of the house so it's not a mess when you and the baby come back. Go with peace of mind. I can't drive you, though, because of work." Empty words kept coming out of his mouth. He was probably planning to bring his mistress over for a semi-cohabitation. I was careful not to show my disgust as I replied, I have some preparations to make, so you go to bed first. I'll sleep after I'm done with everything. This gave me an excuse to sleep on the couch. I waited until my husband went to the bedroom, then I packed all my important belongings into bags and boxes. I wanted to ensure that even if I couldn't come back for my things, I wouldn't be inconvenienced. Of course, I packed the baby clothes and other things I had intended to leave at home. After confirming that my husband was sound asleep, I called my parents. It's been a month since I returned to my parents' house. Tomorrow is my due date. Robert had been calling me every 2 or 3 days to check on me. To an outsider, he would seem like the perfect husband. My mother kept asking, is Robert really having an affair? I had all the evidence and was close to filing for divorce. Today, she asked, isn't Robert coming tomorrow, since it's your due date? I wonder, I answered nonchalantly, just as my phone rang. Hey, Emily. Actually, I'm at a spa resort today. I thought I should relax before the baby comes and things get busy. So he had gone on a trip. I had thought that if he had canceled the trip, I might reconsider the divorce. What do you mean? Weren't you supposed to come to my parents' house on the due date? Disappointed and wanting to believe it wasn't true, I was told over the phone the upsetting news. On my expected delivery date, my husband had actually left for a trip as planned. What difference does it make if I'm there or not? He replied in an annoyed tone. Filled with bitterness, I pretended to be calm and said, yeah, you're right. That's right. As long as you understand. I need to be there to help you, Emily, after you give birth, so I'm just rejuvenating now. Rejuvenating, really? He always pretends not to notice even when I say my back hurts. He took advantage of the fact that I was at my parents' house for the birth to cozy up with his mistress. Hey, Robert. You're at that usual spa resort now, aren't you? I could hear his surprise as he gasped when I guessed the location. How do you know that? Yes, I am, but is there something wrong with that? Nothing but wrong, considering he's on a trip with his mistress. Yes, it's time for some payback. Just wait there. I invited Robert's relatives to the spa as they also wanted to go. I borrowed my mother's phone and contacted Robert's parents and all his relatives. You see, I knew about this trip a few days ago. Actually, this spa is a wonderful inn managed by my uncle. I had confirmed that Robert was using my name to book a nice room, as usual. Unable to go to the spa myself due to my condition, I invited Robert's skeptical in-laws and relatives to stay in the room next to the one Robert had booked. Of course, this time, I specially asked my uncle for a spare key to Robert's room. After my call, it seems Robert's parents and relatives stormed into his room. Robert! What are you doing? I could hear sounds like someone being hit over the phone. The cries of a half-crazed mother-in-law and the shouting of all the relatives filled the air. Like a chaotic zoo. Everyone, how is Robert? Unfortunately, this is just an audio call, so I can't see anything. I also shouted loudly to join in. Amidst the yelling, I couldn't make out what exactly was happening in Robert's room. All I could gather was that Robert's father was giving him a piece of his mind. Emily, I didn't realize. I'm sorry. I'll switch to a video call now, just wait. As soon as my uncle switched, I saw my husband, wearing a yukata, being grabbed by the collar by his father, and his mistress crying her eyes out. The mistress was younger than I expected, and from her hair color and makeup, she seemed to be involved in nightlife entertainment. Seeing the mistress for the first time, my disgust for my husband's taste in gaudily dressed women only grew. You, about to have a child, what are you doing here? Really, I'm ashamed. To think my son would turn out to be such a fool, he said while slapping his cheek again. My mother-in-law, who always doted on her youngest son, my husband, collapsed in tears, crying, Robert, this can't be true. I wanted to lash out at my husband and, of course, beat up his mistress. Watching everything unfold, unable to vent my own anger, I was at peak stress. Seeing my state, my mother turned pale and trembled. She didn't know what to do, seeing her daughter's fury and her son-in-law's disgrace. I'm asking you to do this for me. It's incredibly frustrating that I can't do it myself. All I could do was ask my father-in-law. I really wanted the mistress and my mother-in-law to face the same fate, but I gritted my teeth and held back. Understood, Emily. I'll slap him a couple more times for you. I felt a bit of my anger dissipate. After some time, the punishment from my father-in-law and the relatives shouting subsided. My husband, his cheeks swollen from being hit too much, and the woman, her makeup ruined from crying, appeared on the smartphone screen. Robert, now that you've calmed down, explain yourself. Who is this woman? This thief? Even through the screen, my rage must have been palpable. My husband turned pale. Emily, I'm sorry. This was just a fling. I intended to cherish you and our baby. It was just a physical thing. I'll break it off immediately. He was trying to smooth talk his way out, but I knew everything. I had planted a baby monitor in the bedroom and had been checking what was happening at home since I went to my parents'. Since I left for my parents' house, he had been bringing his mistress home every day, saying things like, "I feel so relieved now that woman is gone. I prefer beautiful and feminine women like you, Kate. I'll divorce her once everything settles down after the birth. She's so clueless, it's laughable." Whenever I heard their voices on the baby monitor, I recorded and collected them. I had amassed quite a number of recordings, which I sent to my uncle. My uncle, a lawyer and my father-in-law's brother, had offered to help with anything at my wedding. Being heavily pregnant, I didn't know any other lawyers I could turn to, so I contacted my uncle as a last resort. He listened kindly and prepared to use the recorded conversations as evidence for my divorce. In their pillow talk, my husband had bragged, "I know a wonderful inn. That log will probably be giving birth around her due date, so let's have fun there." He invited his mistress to the inn managed by my uncle, booking under my name. My uncle found it strange that I would book a stay so close to my due date and contacted me. I explained everything to my uncle, who then informed my in-laws. However, they refused to believe it, insisting our son wouldn't do such a thing, and needed to see it with their own eyes. Thus, I invited all the relatives as witnesses to the inn. So, with all these witnesses here, it's confirmed that Robert has been unfaithful. Therefore, we are proceeding with the divorce. Emily consulted me privately, and I investigated discreetly. To ensure there's no room for him to claim it wasn't a serious affair, please listen to this. Uncle said this and played a few seconds of the recording of Robert and Kate, which was enough to identify their voices during an intimate act. Robert's face lost all color. His cheeks were red from being slapped, but the rest of his face was ashen or blue, looking terrible. Kate, on the other hand, was brazen, as if to say, "So what? As you understand, the division of property will be completely split in half, including furniture. And both of you owe Emily $200,000 each in damages. Robert, you will also pay child support. That's why your damages are set lower. It's Emily's consideration." Uncle explained this calmly. I could have demanded more from Robert, but I preferred an amount that could be paid immediately. I was also receiving damages from Kate, and more importantly, I wanted everything settled by the time the baby was born and I could relax. What do you mean? Damages? Aren't I supposed to receive it? How dare you put me through this? Robert, say something! Kate screeched. The idea that she, not a teenager, could have an affair with a married man and expect to receive money was unthinkable. Kate, right? You're shameless, stealing someone's husband. I'll let you have that worthless man. Just pay the damages and be done with it. Kate seemed shocked when I suddenly yelled at her. She jumped slightly. What? Look here, lady. My dad is the executive vice president of the company you and Robert work for. With me, Robert can climb the corporate ladder, and he'll be treated much better at the company. Besides, $200,000 is just pocket change for us, you poor, ugly woman. Indeed, Kate was brazen enough to be unapologetic about her affair. It's a classic case of someone punching above their weight. I thought about Kate, the mistress who seemed to be quite clueless. She seemed to believe that her father's executive position would make everything all right. Kate, how could you say such things? I did not raise a daughter like this. Emily is a competent woman, highly respected in the secretarial department. Many executives lament her absence, saying the work suffers without her. She's more highly rated in the company than Robert, didn't you know? Kate looked shocked, staring at Robert. Robert, in sales, was not known for exceptional performance, but managed to stay employed due to his good people skills. "Sir, I apologize. I've grown apart from my wife, and after the divorce, I hope to find happiness with Kate." Robert was desperate to stay in the executive vice president's good graces. A demotion was certain if he lost support, but he hoped to climb the corporate ladder with Kate. "Nonsense. I'm not interested in an old man like Robert. He treated me well and gave me gifts, so I dated him. But dating and marriage are different. I'm currently advancing talks to be engaged to the president's son. It was fun, but this is the end." Kate looked down on Robert with utter contempt. I felt a twinge of pity for Robert. But that didn't change my decision not to forgive him. "Kate, your engagement is surely off. The whole company knows about you. The legal notice from Emily's lawyer has been received, and the executives are aware. Not only will you owe Emily damages, but you're also likely to face a claim from the president's son's family." Then, the executive vice president, gripping his daughter's wrists in anger, sternly explained the situation to her. At this point, it seemed like Kate finally realized the seriousness of the situation. Earlier, her face had turned pale, but now it was contorted with distress. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with her father, "Daddy, I'm sorry. Please fix this. You can do it, right? I want to marry him and live a life of luxury." I thought she was a daughter who had been spoiled too much. She probably believed that everything could be fixed by asking her father. But life doesn't work that way. The adult world isn't so lenient. "Kate, you said? You've destroyed someone's family knowingly. You're an adult now. You need to take responsibility for your actions," I said coldly to her. A man who wouldn't hesitate to commit adultery wouldn't marry a woman like her. Even Robert must realize by now that marrying her was out of the question. There was still so much I wanted to say to both of them. But just then, I felt water at my feet. My water had broken. I quickly called my mother, briefly explained over the monitor about my water breaking and needing to go to the hospital, then hung up. Enduring the contractions, I made it to the hospital. About 12 hours after my water broke, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. It was a relatively easy birth, but I was completely exhausted. While resting in my hospital room, I heard that the relatives who were supposed to be at the spa had come to the hospital. Representing the family, my uncle entered my room. "Congratulations and well done. She's a beautiful girl, looks just like Emily. It's a good thing she doesn't resemble that rotten man." He congratulated me. The executive vice president relayed messages from everyone at the workplace. Although I wasn't sure where I would be living next, I planned to invite them all once I settled in a new place. For now, I could finally take a rest. I needed to recuperate from all the stress, as I would be busy caring for the baby once discharged from the hospital. During a month-long stay at my parents' house, I found a new apartment close to my workplace. With the damages received from both Robert and Kate, and a similar amount from Robert's parents as compensation for the trouble caused, I could focus on childcare for the time being. Once my maternity leave was over, I planned to either put my daughter in daycare or ask my mother for help. I was determined to work hard for my daughter's sake. The executive vice president resigned, and Robert was relocated to a regional office. The atmosphere at work had improved, becoming more conducive to productivity. It was time for a fresh start and to move forward with determination.